Chapter 0. Armed crusaders march through the streets of the city, hitting the locals. Their commander shouts that undead have been spotted in the city. He demands that the residents disperse and not interfere with the guards to get rid of the undead. Someone shouts that the undead have been spotted. We urgently need to hide. Some woman standing in the window screams in horror, next to her a child who does not understand what is happening. After the scream, the woman slams the shutters with force, based on the prophecy, only when the undead infiltrate the human people, there will be disasters. A mountain of human remains in the middle of wooden crosses. The sky is red, crows are flying around. Then death will appear. Soldiers stand in ranks in front of the battlefield, where the bodies of the fallen lie. Then there will be a commotion. In the middle of a pile of treasures, leaning on a sword, there is a skeleton in a cape with a hood. He says he doesn't care, maybe he's an undead skeleton. He doesn't want to do something that will lead to chaos. He thinks that if only he could become a paladin. He has light magic after all. The undead from the bottom dream of power and money. Saddle a bigger horse. A bone horse surrounded by glowing energy. Don the armor of honor. A warrior stands in shining armor, observes the oath without unnecessary questions and is not afraid of death. The girl stands in front of the warrior, leaning her sword to her face. He will put his life on the line for the sake of human peace. Warriors in armor on horseback, standing on the edge of a cliff, until the last breath. The girl holding the sword is sitting on the ground, wounded, but not broken. The cat shouts to someone that he is going to become a paladin. He shouldn't be involved in this, it's not normal. The skeleton looks at the cat and says that either he will help him, or he will turn him into an undead. The kitten thinks about these words and jumps to the window, saying that he understood and accepted everything. The skeleton asks the animal where he is going. A kitten with eyes glowing with joy turns around and replies that he is going to look for a way to make a skeleton a paladin. He is already drawn to puke from this. The skeleton Lich, in search of fame and power, vowed to become a legitimate paladin. Chapter 1. It is suggested to listen to the story. But first it is worth answering the question whether it is known who the knights are. The cry of surrender is heard. This is 11,266th year according to the Elven calendar, 10,753rd year according to the human calendar. In the south of the Celtus mainland, a dishonorable invasion began in the kingdom of Issa. A huge army stands on one side of a spacious field. On the other side there is a group of soldiers without a formation. Between them, the field is littered with bodies and smoking remains of warriors. A cry is heard, addressing Yulin, by Bella, by Hill, that she has no more chances. Why doesn't she think about her followers? She wants to drag them with her to hell. The girl with long hair was sitting wounded, pressing her hand to her chest. She starts coughing. Around her, the ground is strewn with arrows. A white-haired man riding a horse surrounded by warriors shouts to her that she should swear by the name of the king of the kingdom of Issa that she will renounce the right to inherit the title of Grand Duke of the House of Bihil. In that case, he will pardon her. A defeated enemy casts an oath without keeping his word. The world will be captured by eternal darkness. The girl grins, saying the word oath. Smiling, she asks the king if he thinks his oath can be reliable. His Majesty tells her that she has no other choice. He also wouldn't break his oath in front of tens of thousands of people. The girl closes her eyes. She thinks while making a decision. Then, he turns to his men and orders everyone to lay down their weapons. She tells them to do what the king says. The soldiers are surprised by such an order. They turn to Her Highness and Lin, amazed at her order. They say they can still fight. They are ready to fight against the royal army for life and death. And Lin, leaning on the sword, says that the result of the battle is already clear. There is no need for soldiers to sacrifice their lives. They came to the battlefield to fulfill the oath given to the Bihil family. From that moment on, she releases them from the oath. She tells them to lay down their weapons. The soldiers are amazed by Her Highness' will, but they do her bidding by throwing swords on the ground. And Lin says thank you to them for messing with her so far. She will be the only one fighting next. Even in the dark, there are those who decided to defend honor. And Lin stands up, raising her sword, and tells His Majesty that she is very sorry. Behind her is her homeland, and she can't back down no matter what. It's the honor of the Bihil family. Her soldiers are screaming at her in horror, not understanding what Her Majesty is going to do. They ask her to stop, and Lin rushes across the field to attack the king, saying that he will fight until the end of his days. The king laughs, calling her a stupid girl, and saying that it means it will be the way she wants. He raises his hand, telling the knights to get ready. Here someone says modesty and respect. The king is surprised, not understanding who is saying this. Someone's voice keeps saying, honesty and empathy, and Lin slows down sharply after these words. She turns around in shock, recognizing this voice. The speaker continues, valor, justice and willingness to sacrifice. On a cliff above the battlefield there is a horse with a rider dressed in armor, and Lin finds out that it's Gray. There are still those who are not afraid of life and death to keep the oath. Standing Gray is joined by the same knights, clad in armor, drawing swords. For the sake of honor and faith, panic begins among the king's soldiers as they recognize Gray, a legendary knight Gray, who is equal to 100 knights. Someone is shouting at them not to be afraid, since it's only a dozen knights, and they have tens of thousands of people on their side. Gray draws his sword and says that he once swore an oath to be faithful to Lin Bai Bella Bihil. All those who are her enemies will become his enemies. All those who harm her will incur his wrath. He would fight for her honor until his last breath. Gray rushes into battle, leading the Silver Moon Knights to attack. That's exactly what a knight is. The southern part of the Keltis mainland is in the idle and peaceful port of Xianyu. Small houses are located near the shore, lights are on in many windows. An unearthly monster broke the silence of this place. The cry of the soldiers is heard that everyone has gathered their strength. They cannot be allowed to escape the evil undead. Men-at-arms in armor walk along the stone streets. Armed crusaders march through the streets of the city, hitting the locals. Their commander shouts that undead have been spotted in the city. He demands that the residents disperse and not interfere with the guards to get rid of the undead. A woman standing at a grocery store turns around, surprised that the undead have been spotted. A man holding a basket of groceries wonders if it really is the one on the hill to the south. They drop the groceries and run away. A cat looks out from behind the counter in fright. Some woman standing in the window screams in horror, next to her a child who does not understand what is happening. After the scream, the woman slams the shutters with force. The commander of the soldiers led part of the squad to go in one direction to search, and the other to follow him. They say that when they catch the undead, they will grind their bones into powder, and then they will be placed on the city wall. Hiding behind barrels, the skeleton Lich watches the soldiers walking down the street. He is trembling with fear, not understanding what has happened to these people. The cat, sitting in a barrel next to him, says that he told him that he was undead. He should be underground, which he forgot on Earth. The skeleton Lich turns in shock, not understanding who is speaking. He shouts who is talking to him. The cat screams back, not understanding why the skeleton is screaming. Here the cat is gagged, asking to shut up, as a very loud noise can attract soldiers. Lich says these bad people claim they would break his bones. Very wild. The cat says that the skeleton shouted first. He answers him that everyone who meets a talking cat will subconsciously scream in horror. Here the skeleton is surprised by something, saying that something is wrong. He holds the animal up in front of him and says that it doesn't look like a cat. The skeleton understands that it is a spirit in the body of a cat, and in this he is not mistaken. The cat hits him on the arm with his paw, tells him not to be surprised, and jumps to the ground. There are many animals in this world that are possessed by spirits, but such a bone rack walking along the road is rarely seen. The cat asks the skeleton that he is on Earth for the first time. He wonders how the cat knows this. He's really on Earth for the first time. The cat saws his claws and calmly says that a novice undead like a skeleton can see everything at a glance. He tells the skeleton to lay out why he moved to the ground, and stays on it, despite the risk of being ground into powder. The skeleton says it's a long story. He asks the cat that he probably knows that the abyss is a very dangerous place. If you want to live in the abyss, you need to have skills with you, and he was born unusually fragile. And then he thought it would be great if he pretended to be a skeleton specimen to be near the Great Lich and learn magic. Suddenly, his plan came true. The Great Lich did not notice his presence for many years, until one day. The Lich pays attention to the skeleton and says that there will be an auction of magical items in the abyss today. But he can't leave. And then he realizes that he can turn the sample into a skeleton soldier to run errands for him. The sample tells him that it can run errands for him without turning into a skeleton soldier. Then when he wanted to run away in a panic, he knocked over the laboratory equipment, and the Lich then looked angry. The skeleton continues, saying that when he was on the run, he stole some jewelry. For example, this ring. He shows a gold ring on his hand. It's embarrassing. The Great Lich let slip that he would teach me a good lesson, and he fled to Earth because it was too scary there. The cat drops the nail file in shock. He apologizes to the skeleton for disturbing him, saying that he will say goodbye to him now. The cat offers the skeleton to pretend that no one saw anyone today. The cat hits himself in the face with his paw, saying that his curiosity will ruin him. Why would he talk to this skeleton? If the Great Lich finds out, he's screwed. The skeleton grabs the cat by the tail, asking him to wait. The cat turns around, hisses and says that the skeleton needs it. If he is looking for death, then he should not be dragged along. The cat continues, saying that the skeleton will turn into powder in the hands of whoever grabs it. so don't drag an innocent cat into this. The skeleton replies that he just doesn't understand why people are targeting him. Even if the Great Lich doesn't. He doesn't even cross paths with people. The cat screams that it's hard to understand. He's an undead. Undead. He knows what it's like to be undead. Undead is a synonym for trouble and death for humanity. They will do everything to eliminate the skeleton as a source of disaster. Does he not understand this? The skeleton points his finger at the cat and asks that the same is also undead. Why people don't hunt him? The cat says that as a skeleton dares to compare them. He has the perfect combination of good manners and elegance, a perfect being. He just lay there, rolling on the floor, and people took care of him. It is no exaggeration to say that the cat is the master of mankind. The skeleton says he doesn't understand it. What does a perfect being mean? And why do people take care of him so much? He can also roll on the floor, so why is the cat the master and they want to smash his bones to smithereens? The cat is amazed that the skeleton does not understand. He says that when he was a man, his mother told him not to play with fools. He leaves telling the skeleton that they will see each other again, although no, never again. He grabs the cat by the scruff of the neck. The skeleton holds the cat at arm's length and looks away, saying that there is someone walking at the city gate. The cat tries to beat him with his paws and shouts that he has not finished yet. He doesn't care who's there. These are warriors on horseback, led by Lin. One of the warriors drives up to her and says that this is the port of Xianyu. And Lin looks around and says that this is a little strange city. All doors and windows are closed in it. The commander of the Crusaders waves to them and says that they are probably tired, having arrived here from afar. They are the guardians of Xianyu port, and they are looking for undead who have entered the port. He asks to be allowed to apologize in advance if he has caused any inconvenience to their lordships. And Lin is surprised by the presence of the undead. The warrior tells her that they have things to do, so they should not complicate their task. And Lin tells the soldiers that she will praise their loyalty and bravery to Count Caspar, and now they should step aside. The Crusader commander thanks Lin for her kind words. They won't interrupt their journey. He wishes the procession a good journey. The same ones are driving further down the street. The guard asks the commander who these people were. He replies that you should not ask about what you should not. Xianyu port will change soon, and if the soldiers have time to gossip, then they can look for this undead. The skeleton, who was sitting behind the barrel and watching all this, asks the cat if he saw what happened. Why are these pieces of iron so respected? The cat replies that these are not pieces of iron, but knights. The skeleton doesn't know who the knights are. The cat says that the so-called knights are the embodiment of justice and glory. They protect ordinary people and bring peace and tranquility to life. Therefore, whenever a knight appears, people spontaneously support him. The skeleton is illuminated by an idea, and he says so that's it, he understood everything. The cat replies that if he understands, then let him go back underground. Although the Great Lich inspires fear, but the skeleton still has a place underground where you can hide. On Earth, a skeleton is an object of popular anger. Everyone will try to hit him. The skeleton says no, he won't come back. He wants to be respected too. Determination lights up in his eyes. He is a Lich Grey, swears here that he will become a respected knight. The cat falls from the barrel in shock. The cat asks the skeleton what he just said. He replies that he wants to become a respected knight. The cat asks to repeat the previous sentence. The skeleton replies that he is a Lich Grey, swears here. The cat says that Grey is a Lich who is afraid of people, and he wants to become a knight. Let him not involve the cat in this. Chapter 2. Night has fallen over Port Xianyu. The red moon is burning brightly in the sky. Lich Grey walks through the streets, holding a cat with one hand, holding a huge bag on his back with the other. He puts the bag on the ground, pours out its contents. This is battle armor. Grey laughs, saying that with this equipment he can become a knight. The cat crosses his paws on his chest, calling Grey naive, and saying that he will not be able to become a knight even if he steals armor from the forge. He replies that he knows everything, so he also grabbed this and shoves the book under the cat's nose. This is a guide for a successful knight. Grey took it from the bookstore near the forge. Just by following the instructions in this book, you can easily become a knight. The cat opens its mouth to bite the book, but Grey abruptly removes it. He asks the cat what he is doing. This book is a precious treasure. The cat asks this madman to let him go. Grey unclenches his fingers and the cat jumps to the ground. He says he doesn't know where Grey got such confidence from, but relying on such a book is impossible to become a knight. Grey opens the book and asks why it is impossible. Are the 8 knightly virtues described in this book not difficult to learn? He asks the cat, maybe he will take a look at them. The cat in anger asks Grey to shut up, saying that who wants to read this third-rate novel? This book is useless. Why doesn't Gray understand this? The same one asks why it is useless. The cat shouts that if Gray wants to become a knight, then he must have a horse. Does Gray have a horse? And in general, are there any horses that the Lich could ride? Gray wants to make him the first cat to die from a brain hemorrhage. Gray thinks about the fact that he needs a horse. His eyes light up with determination. He spreads his arms. Blue energy lights up around them. Gray asks the Great Spirit to hear his call and wake up. The cat screams in horror at Gray what he is trying to do again. On the ground in front of them, a yellow circle lights up, lined with symbols. A bone horse emerges from it, surrounded by energy, which asks about who awakened the great Tenedas. Gray holds the horse's mouth and asks him to be quiet, otherwise they will be killed because of him. Now the horse is undead and should not be found. The horse is terrified. He screams about how the great Tenedas became undead. Gray shouts at him to shut up. They'll have all their bones broken if they attract people here. The cat is terrified and says that the army is already here. Meanwhile, in the castle of Count Casper, Lord of the Port of Sanya, a huge castle with a lot of lights on, the girl comes in and is introduced as Mrs. Byhill, Her Highness and Lin by Bella Byhill. In the hall, a man sits on a throne, laughing, addressing Yilin as his beautiful niece. It's been years since they've seen each other, and Lin bows his head, and pressing his hand to his heart, tells his uncle Casper that they really haven't seen each other for many years. She is glad to see that he is healthier than ever. Casper laughs, saying that the lovely little Yilin is so eloquent. His stupid son was lucky to marry someone like Lin. She asks again that she will be taken as a wife. Casper smiles, saying that didn't he tell her about it? He began to forget everything with age. The main reason why he invited Yilin here today this time is the desire to facilitate her marriage with his son. And Lin is not happy about such prospects at all. She presses her hands to her chest and tells Count Casper that if he invited her only to discuss such unrealistic issues, then how about thinking about how to help her inherit the title of the Byhill family? He taps his fingers on the armrest of the throne and asks Yilin not to argue. Even if she is named heir in the Grand Duke's will, what can she do? It should be borne in mind that her younger brother. And Lin interrupts him saying that it's not her brother. Casper clarifies that even if it is her father's illegitimate son. And Lin shouts that her father never had illegitimate children. That's a lie. Casper points at Yilin with a baton and shouts enough to her. As the king said, so it will be. Her brother inherits the title. She retains the property inherited from her mother, renounces Byhill's name and marries his son. Casper ends his speech by saying that this is the result of his negotiations with the king and she cannot resist. And Lin says that the fox's tail has finally appeared. Casper swore an oath in front of her father that he would remain faithful to her after his death. Casper laughs, saying he's sorry, but he serves Grand Duke Byhill faithfully, and Yilin hasn't inherited that title yet, has she? And Lin silently stretches out his hand to the warrior standing next to him and holding an object. And Lin throws a handkerchief in front of him, and says that in this case, according to old customs, Casper can establish a new oath. If a knight throws a handkerchief or glove in front of someone, then he challenges the person to a duel. 3 soldiers with torches are standing on the night streets of the city. They discuss that they have not found anything, although it was from this side that strange sounds were heard earlier. They run, shouting that they need to search everything again and find this skeleton. Gray is watching them from around the corner of the house, holding a cat. A skeleton horse stands nearby, covered with a cloak. Gray wipes the sweat from his forehead and says that they got carried away. The horse also wipes his sweat and says that he did not expect that Tenedas would have a day when he would turn to flight. The cat says he thinks he's going to die soon. He asks Gray if he can let him go. Gray is amazed and asks the cat again if he still shouldn't help him become a knight. Gray sits on the ground and examines the helmet, saying that people will be able to see his face when he puts on this helmet. Tenedas replies that he doesn't think so. These knights have black helmets. The cat screams that when he promised to help Gray become a knight, he's just a helpless poor kitten. And in general, how can a Lich become a knight? The cat is going crazy. Gray turns to Tenedas and says that he has yet to receive armor. The cat attracts their attention by asking if they are listening to him at all. Gray tells the cat that he wants to say that it is impossible for a Lich to become a knight, but this is not in the book. The cat yells that Gray is an idiot. The Lich is darkness, the night is light. How can darkness become light? How is this possible? Gray says that's how it turns out that the cat was paying attention. It's alright, he can control the magic of light and will surely be able to join the light side. Tenedas laughs, saying that for sure Gray will be the brightest person in the world. The cat yells at the horse that it's not a light. Why does a Lich have divine light magic at all? However, Tenedas must convince Gray to return underground. The horse kicks and says no. The great Tenedas will not be afraid to run face to the sun. The cat sadly lowers his head. He falls to the ground and asks to come and kill him. He's tired, wants to sleep, and really doesn't want to go crazy with them. He will find himself another body, which he will possess, and in 2 months he will be pretty again. Gray approaches him and asks if he is really tired and whether it is worth turning him into an undead. He lacks the necromancer's staff. Gray says that having turned into the undead, the cat will never feel tired. The cat jumps and tells Gray to follow him. He asks where. The cat with a smile says that to find a way for Gray to become a real knight. Gray asks the cat if they haven't just talked about turning him into an undead. The cat replies that no, he thinks that everything is fine. Gray asks again, saying that he does not want to try. It's convenient to be undead. The cat asks Gray to lower his hands and not approach him. Chapter 3. There are 2 soldiers. One of them raises a lighted torch in front of him and asks the others if they have found anything on their side. Another soldier, yawning, replies that no, and they won't find it. It's already late at night, I want to sleep. He is told that it is not known whether the skeleton has escaped from the city. Then they notice someone ahead. This is a knight in armor leading a horse by the bridle. A cat is sitting on the knight's shoulder. Gray whispers to the cat what they should do now, because there are soldiers ahead. He's very nervous. The cat tells him not to look back, go straight and do what he said. Gray with a horse and a cat passes by the soldiers when one of them calls out to him, asking him to wait. A soldier tells Gray that there are undead in the city. Today they have martial law. It's better for him to find a hotel to relax rather than wander around the street. Gray, stuttering, replies, okay. Gray wipes his sweat with a handkerchief, watching the soldiers leave, discussing that they didn't find anything and that they should go and have a drink. The cat tells Gray that he said nothing would happen. Gray claps his hands with joy, saying that he is a genius. He hid in this armor and used control magic. Teneda's disguise was also successful. Gray stretches out his hand and says that we need to find the Lord right now and force him to be knighted. The cat in response to this hits him on the head with his paw, saying where Gray will find the Lord in the dead of night. Gray asks, not understanding why he can't find the Lord in the dead of night. The cat yells at him because the Lord should be asleep by now, and don't let Gray ask why the Lord wants to sleep. In any case, he will go in search of him during the day. Gray says he understood the cat and asks what they should do now. He replies that he needs to do something. Gray says it's his first time as a knight after all, so he's a little excited. The cat says that in this case they should go to the tavern. The knights are constantly drinking there. Gray replies that then they are heading for the tavern. At the same time, Yilin is standing on the balcony of the castle, accompanied by 2 guards, and looks at the night city. She clutches her sword with one hand when one of the warriors behind her tells her that she has a duel tomorrow, so he asks her to please go to bed early. And Lin asks the 2 warriors, Halls and Abi Robs, if they, like everyone else, think that her decision was impulsive. One of them tells her that he will challenge her decision, but he does not understand why she agreed to such harsh conditions. And Lin replies that because Casper would only agree to such conditions. The warrior shouts at Lin that then it is not worth negotiating with this fat pig. He won't be able to trap them with his few people. They can protect her and kill him right away. And Lin turns to the soldier and says that they would have left the port of Sanya, and what would have happened next. From the moment the king wanted to illegally seize the territory of the Bihil family, they had no choice. Whether the warriors admit it or not, they need Casper to send troops to support them. The warrior scratches his head and says that this pig demanded that their knights fight against his knights in the Battle of Izmir. Whoever holds out wins. They will only bring 20 knights, they will not be able to win by numbers. And Lin replies that there is a well-known group of mercenaries near the port of Sanya. Let the warriors take her banner and hire them. If they can apply good tactics and study their weaknesses, it won't be impossible for them to win. It is enough for the soldiers to trust the sovereign they have chosen. She tells the warriors that she will lead them to the end and share the fruits of victory together. She swears by the name of Bihil. Gray and his companions came to the tavern in the night. Gray says that this is the same tavern that often appears in the guide for a successful knight. The cat says that after Gray enters the tavern, he should buy a glass of wine and fish. He replies that he can understand ordering wine in a tavern, but why fish? The cat says he's starving. If Gray wants the cat to help him, he must feed him. He opens the door to the tavern, specifies the order of the cat. The tavern is crowded, the bartender wipes dishes, visitors sit, drink and chat. A girl approaches Gray, greeting him as a knight, and asks if he is alone. He replies that no, he has a cat with him, and there are 2 of them. The girl laughs, considering Gray's words very funny. She leads him to a table, and one of the customers pays attention to him as a newcomer. A man tells another man with a red tail that Gray looks like a knight errant. They can invite him to their group. He asks not to make him laugh. Anyone cannot join the mercenaries of the Red Scorpion. If this knight can show his good side, then an exception can be made. Gray happily watches the cat eat the fish and says that the girl called him Mr. Knight. The cat replies that it's just a courtesy, that's what they call all the guys in armor. The cat, chewing the fish, asks if Gray has money with him. Gray clarifies whether the cat means the metal currency that people use for trading. He holds out his palm, on which there is a silver coin, and says that he took one as a souvenir in memory of visiting the treasury of the Great Lich. The cat is surprised that Gray has only one coin, then asks how much is needed. The cat asks him to forget, saying that this will be enough for today, but from now on they will face difficult times. Gray points to the table where other customers are playing and asks the cat not to be so pessimistic. If they really need money, then they can go there and take it. The men watching Gray laugh. The dark-haired man asks the other, saying that Gray is funny if he is going to take him after all. A man with a red tail asks a friend why he is so interested in this knight. He replies that in the end the guy just sat down at the table and won several times in a row. The guy who dares to joke with the casino is definitely a tough guy, isn't he? His interlocutor thinks. Gray, sitting at the gaming table, won again. The cat whispers in his ear that they have attracted a lot of attention. He advises now to lose several times. The man pours coins in front of Gray, his winnings. Gray asks the cat why they should lose if they can win. The man with the scar on his face, continuing to pour coins, tells Gray that he has gained authority and asks him if he wants to play a few games with him alone. 10 silver coins at a time, whether Gray will pull such a bet. The cat whispers to Gray to give it up or he will have big problems. Gray says he's ready to play. The cat hits him on the head, saying that they will be killed because of Gray. He replies that everything is fine, he will not lose. After a while, Gray comes out of the tavern with a bag full of money and tells the cat that he does not understand why he is nervous because they earn a lot of money. In the Lich world, probabilities are studied at a fundamental level, and these people are too weak. The cat answers Gray if he knows that in the human world, winning all the time is not very good. Gray's path is blocked by robbers, led by a man with a scar, whom Gray beat. He asks Gray that he just wants to leave after winning. He cheated, so it's better for him to leave everything he won, otherwise he will feel bad. The man makes a threatening gesture. The cat tells Gray that these are the consequences of his insolence. The same one does not understand what the man is talking about. They ask the cat that they are trying to start a fight with him. The cat screams at him why he's still standing, why he's not running. Doesn't he remember being chased through the streets? Gray replies that he is different now, he has an assistant. Behind him comes a horse who says that Tenidas wants to fight. His hooves are hungry. The cat asks if Tenidas is reliable. He thought that he would fall apart when he took a couple of steps. Gray gets on horseback and asks the cat not to worry. The robbers tell the leader that Gray is a knight. He shouts that it doesn't matter, let them throw him off his horse. The robbers approach Gray and start shouting threats and demands to get off the horse. Tenidas raises his hooves up and hits one robber in the face from the beginning, then another in the stomach. After that, the horse jumps up. The men below are terrified. Gray lands right in the center of their gathering, causing them to fly away screaming in pain. Tenidas attacks, and the robbers fly away screaming. All the men are defeated. Gray is sitting on horseback. Robbers are lying around him. The doors of the tavern are open. Men are standing in them, watching all this and saying that this time the gamblers have had their faces trimmed. The man asks the partner with the red tail if he still thinks Gray is anyone. He's in shock. The cat opens his mouth in surprise and asks if Tenidas is really such a good fighter. Gray says that he actually quietly applied several layers of enhancement magic to Tenidas. It's time for them to go. Chapter 4. Day. The sun is shining brightly. The tournament field is prepared. There are tents. People are standing and discussing rumors, namely that his lordship is going to have a battle with a great man from another place. Someone wonders how his lordship will fight with his figure, but they say that the knights under the lords will compete, not they themselves. There has not been such activity in the port of Sanya for a long time. The men are walking, and one of them with a red tail points his hand forward and tells the others that this is what he calls a competition. Someone paid a lot of money for their participation. Gray is among the others. The man tells Gray that with his skills, such fights are easy. Gray asks if he will really be given the title of knight. The man replies that he is sure that exactly. They say that if he is not a knight, he cannot participate in the tournament, so the lady gave each of them a temporary knight title. Gray is not happy that the title is temporary. He wants a real knighthood, and that he had some kind of title. Casper takes grapes from a plate of fruit. He eats it and turns to Yulin and tells her if she sees what a fuss this case has caused. If she loses, she will be humiliated. He cares about the reputation of the Bihil family, and Lin replies that the reputation of the Bihil family is not something that should concern His Excellency the Count. He asks her why she doesn't call him uncle, and Lin replies that if she loses, she will keep her oath, and if she wins, she hopes that His Excellency the Count will not give up on her. He laughs and says that it is natural. The herald reads out the rules. The competition consists of foot and horse battles in the format of the Battle of the Sea. Each side sends its knight to the duel, who will be suspended in case of defeat or surrender. The winner must accept the challenge of the opponent's knight, and also has the right to decide whether the next duel will be mounted or on foot. This is repeated until all the knights on one side are eliminated and the winner is determined. If Count Casper loses, he must swear allegiance to Miss Yulin. If Miss Yulin loses, she must accept the Earl's son's proposal and get married at the appointed time. Then, they are asked to enter the arena of Count Casper's knights. Many knights come forward. Everyone is surprised by their number. Then, they are asked to enter the arena of the knights of Miss and Lin. Everyone is surprised that there are so few of them. People are discussing how a few dozen can fight against a few hundred. Everyone starts betting on the Count's victory. The Count laughs, telling Yulin that these are just a few stupid townspeople, and that she shouldn't be offended. He knows that she wants to prove herself, so don't let her worry. She won't lose too ugly. And Lin turns to Halls, asking if he has hired mercenaries. He replies that they are waiting outside the arena. The tournament begins. Casper's knight strikes the knight and Lin. The warriors' weapons hit each other's shields. Casper's knight receives a blow to the head, from which he falls and loses consciousness. The first round ends with Lin winning and Casper losing. The second round ends with Lin winning and Casper losing. The third round ends with Casper winning and Lin losing. The fourth round begins. Halls, watching the tournament, says that the number of Casper's people exceeds them. It plays against them. He asks Yulin to put him in the battle. He will be able to replace 10 of them. And Lin says there's no hurry and let him go and call those mercenaries. Halls asks if Yulin plans to use mercenaries to drain the strength of Casper's troops. She replies that because one ruler has the worst people and the other has the best, they still have a limited number of people. They need to be careful. The man with the red tail shouts to the others to prepare weapons. The noble gentleman called them to enter the arena. They cannot disgrace themselves. They are cleaning their weapons and are surprised that so soon. Halls tells them that this duel is important for the Bihil family. He asks to help his mistress get the victory. One of the mercenaries says it's easy to say. There are only about 40 people in the group combined. 100 are fighting against them. How can they win? They get paid for their work and will do their best, but they cannot guarantee the result. Halls, hearing these words, angrily thinks that they need to use the power of this rabble. What a shame. Here someone asks if he can ask a question. Halls turns in surprise. It's Gray, who raises his hand and asks if Halls will knight him. He asks in surprise that didn't Miss grant them the title of knight. Gray replies that he doesn't want a temporary title like the one they were granted. He wants a real knighthood with a title. Halls begins to say that he is getting ahead of himself when he is interrupted by Yulin, who appeared behind him. She says that if Gray wants to get a real knighthood, then he can do it. However, the title of knight is awarded for merit and cannot be given lightly. And Lin, turning to Gray, says that if he can defeat 50 people for her in the tournament, she will award him the title of knight. Chapter 5. And Lin, turning to Gray, says that if he can defeat 50 people for her in the tournament, she will award him the title of knight. He's in shock. The cat wonders if Lin is joking or not. It forces you to do what is impossible. The cat begins to tell Gray that he should refuse when he agrees without listening to him. The cat is in shock, and Lin says that Gray is very cheerful, and she will wait for good news from him. Halls is nearby in shock, and Lin leaves the mercenaries, calling Halls to follow him, who, still shocked, obeys the order. At this time, the cat hits Gray on the head with his paws, asking if he is mentally retarded. The cat takes Gray by the scarf, calls him a blockhead and asks what is going on in his head. Gray says he only needs to defeat 50 people there. Why worry so much if Tenidas can knock over 100? The cat is surprised that Tenidas will participate. The cat asks Gray to look at those who are still fighting in the arena. All of them preferred to fight on foot. In other words, to bring Tenidas to the field, you need to win a foot battle. Only the winner has the right to change the method of combat. The cat asks Gray if he knows how to fence. He doesn't understand what it is, and he says that he does not know how at all. The cat knew it. They need to think about how to act. On the pedestal of the lords, Casper notices that both Lin and Halls have returned. Casper tells Yilin that he didn't think she would rely on the punks from the Red Scorpions. No wonder the Bihil family is going down. And Lin sits down in a chair and says that it's worth waiting and seeing if she disappears. The guy shouts to his boss Paz that the girl allowed him to enter the arena. Paz pulls out his sword and says it looks like the fun vacation is over. He pulls his sword out of its scabbard and says that perhaps it's worth taking the work much more seriously. Casper looks at it in shock. Paz attacks the opponent and easily wins by smashing the knight's armor. Having won, the groove whistles a cheerful tune. The crowd, rejoicing at the victory, shouts the name of Paz and demands more battles. Casper bites his fingers, watching the battle, and thinking that Paz is a mercenary, since he was able to win 5 rounds in a row. His servant whispers to him that it is the leader of the Red Scorpion mercenaries, Paz Keeler. Casper bites his finger, saying that Paz is an insignificant mercenary and too arrogant. He smiles and orders the guy to be released. These mercenaries should know what consequences the Count's speech can lead to. The crowd at this time rejoices in the victories of the groove. The audience is discussing that the groove is really strong. The Count's knights are useless in front of him. Paz will be able to win 10 more rounds. Here someone attracts attention by the fact that the Count has sent a new knight to the field. The crowd meets him in shock, not understanding what is wrong with him. She thinks it's a giant. This is a huge warrior with almost no armor, which is much larger than the groove in front of him. Both Lin and Halls look at Casper's knight in shock. He laughs and invites Paz to play a little. He looks at his opponent in shock. Paz says he'll have to ask that girl to throw some money on top. At this time, somewhere Gray is sitting on the ground, studying the sword. He says the sword is so hard to use. He needs to think about whether there is magic to make the sword move on its own. The cat, looking at all this, tells Gray that he can refuse it. Chapter 6. Day. The sun is shining. A bird flies in the sky over the city. Paz and Casper's warrior are standing opposite each other in the tournament arena. The lords are looking at them from the tent. The crowd is watching around. She discusses that Casper's warrior is a monster. They are scared. A duel is announced between the knights of Count Casper and Miss Yilin. The 12th round has been announced. The monster rushes at Paz with a scream. He jumps aside and the blow of a huge sword cuts the ground. Paz turns around, assessing the opponent's strength. Then, Paz counterattacks, to which his opponent laughs. Paz watches in shock as his sword crumbles into pieces. He thinks it's a joke. The opponent appears behind him, raising a mace over him. Paz understands that things are bad. You need to dodge. He turns around in surprise, not having time to dodge. The monster strikes him with force. The ornament hanging on the neck of the groove rushes into the air. The rope on which it was held is torn. Halls is in shock. Sweat begins to flow from his face and Lin. The groove and the blood spray flies away from the enemy for a long distance. He falls right on the arena railings. The groove doesn't get up anymore. There's a pool of blood around it. The crowd asks Paz if he's okay. Count Casper laughs, rejoicing at the victory. That's what happens to those who go against him. The monster steps on the groove decoration lying on the ground. The same one is still lying motionless. Paz starts coughing, coming to his senses. He raises his head, thinking that he has a broken rib. Paz gets up from his knees when the opponent raises the mace over him again. He is trembling with pain and thinks that in such a situation it is necessary to force that girl to double the reward. The groove jumps up, and the blow of the weapon falls under it. He swings the rest of the sword at the opponent. The groove strikes the opponent's eyes with the blade. He screams in pain. Paz jumps to the side, and his opponent screams, putting his hand to his eyes. The groove lands on the ground, and then he quickly rushes into the attack, bringing the remnants of the sword to strike, and attacks the enemy. Blood starts spurting from his opponent, and the groove sweeps past. The monster turns around and laughing, says that the groove is playing dirty. He insults Paz and falls to the ground, losing consciousness. Paz exhales with relief. He turns around and says that he is not a bastard, but a favorite of the people of the port of Sanya. The groove starts spitting blood, and Lin tells Halls to remove the groove, and then find him a doctor. He accepts the order. The day is gradually coming to an end. The sun is setting over the city. The cat tells Gray that he is not going to the competition. Then why are they here? Gray says that he creates weapons because he can't use a sword. Therefore, he asks the cat to think about creating a weapon that Gray can use. The cat says it's fine, but Gray needs to hurry, or the tournament will end. He is in shock and shouts that they need to hurry. Chapter 7. The fight between Yilin and Casper continued until nightfall. Up to this point, Lin had suffered heavy losses. 4 were killed, 7 were seriously wounded. Several people surrendered, leaving only 6 combat ready. Although Count Casper did not have strong fighters, they were outnumbered. Now he has 61 knights left. A knight with a red armband stands over a defeated knight with a blue armband. The winner laughs. The shout of the next opponent is heard from the crowd. Paz sits on the roof and watches it. He thinks the knights under Lady and Lin are brave enough. However, 6 against 61. Let's say one can knock out 10. On the contrary, there will be one more knight. It's not so easy to win. Paz bites the bread. Halls calls out to him from below, chewing. He asks what business Mr. Knight is looking for him. He answers how dare Paz ask what he is looking for him about. Halls shouts to Paz that most of the mercenaries under his command have given up halfway. What's the matter in the end? Where did their chivalry go? Paz waves his hand and replies that it's worth being kinder. After all, they are mercenaries, not knights. They're only paid to help them fight, but they've never said they're willing to sell their lives. Halls urges himself to calm down, because he is not here to argue with him. Halls says let them skip this question, but where is the man who boasted that he would put 50 people? He also carried a cat with him. Paz asks if Halls is talking about Gray. Paz replies that he doesn't know. Maybe Gray just wasn't called and he went to feed the cat. Halls says he's not kidding right now. His words are interrupted by the announcement that Count Caspar is winning again. Halls turns around angrily at these words. Missy Lin only has 5 people left. Halls runs, thinking that Caspar should not be allowed to continue his winning streak. It looks like the outcome of the tournament will be clear soon. Halls thinks he needs to get into the arena by then. He stops when he hears a strange sound. Halls turns around in surprise at the noise. A foot in a metal boot hits the ground with force. A piece of a strange object is visible. It was Gray who came to the arena, carrying a huge gate on a chain. The crowd looks at him in shock. Gray asks how many people Count Caspar has left. The Count in shock drops a glass of wine. It falls and breaks, and Lin gets up from his seat in surprise. The Count and his servant open their mouths in horror, and Lin understands that this guy may bring her victory. She smiles. Gray carries a huge gate and asks the shocked Halls where Count Caspar is. Halls can't say the words in shock. Then Halls points to the side and shouts to Gray that Caspar just has about 50 knights left. Gray can go and join. Gray smiles, saying he's back on time. He says that then he immediately drove to the arena, then throws the gate forward. The gate lands on the arena, crashing into the ground. Caspar's knight, clutching his weapon, trembles with fear, looking at Gray's weapon. Gray, leaning on his hand, climbs to the top of the gate. He is all wrapped in chains that are attached to the gate. Gray gets to his feet, clutching chains in his hands, and says that he is ready for battle. Caspar's knight is in shock. He takes the axe and puts it in front of him, telling Gray that he gives up. He is amazed, and he says that in this case, let the next one come out. A man shouts that he does not want to enter the arena. Another shouts that there are enough jokes. Fighting with such a monster, you can also hit in the face. A scuffle begins among Caspar's people, as no one wants to go to the arena. Gray stands at the top of the gate, looking at a bunch of Caspar's men in front of him and the Lord's tent. Caspar clenches his fists and asks how Gray dared to demolish the gates of the Count's palace and use them as a weapon. It's a joke. He didn't let that happen. Chapter 8. The crowd looks in surprise at the gate and Gray sitting on it. They don't know if it's a joke. This is Count Caspar's gate. The crowd doesn't understand who Gray is. Caspar clenches his fists and gets angry, not understanding how it all came to this. The servant wiping his sweat bends down to the Count and tells him that this is not good. Knights would rather give up their titles than fight. The servant says that they don't have a chance unless they change the style of the duel to a horse fight. The Count asks again about the horse fight. He understands that this is the only way. Gray is sitting and wondering why his next opponent hasn't come out yet. Why are they so slow? Here the Count calls out to Gray, saying that his strength is really breathtaking. Gray turns to him. The Count continues by saying that as the tournament organizer, he can't wait to see the knight's skill. He's sure everyone wants to know if his riding is as amazing as his strength. Gray asks again in surprise about horseback riding, and Lin reacts angrily to these words. She gets up and tells Caspar that the rules of the tournament seem to be such that the winner decides how the next duel will take place. He smiles and asks Yulin not to be so strict. If she didn't accept a horse fight, his men wouldn't fight. And if they don't fight, then the tournament will go on forever. She doesn't want that outcome, and Lin is trembling with anger. The Count turns away from her, turning to Gray, asking if he will accept the request for an equestrian duel. Gray scratches his head. Gray asks that if he accepts a horse fight, can he put all his knights out to fight him? Lin's eyes widen in shock. She asks everyone. The Count also asks everyone. He asks if Gray means everyone together. He says that it is so. If half of them do not come out to fight again, then 50 people will not be enough for him again. The crowd is shocked. Hall shouts to Gray that he has gone mad. How will he cope with so many people? Count Casper shouts to Gray that of course he will expel everyone. This is a wonderful offer. They agreed. Halls stands and thinks that this is madness. Such a ridiculous tournament should be stopped. Someone calls Gray, and Halls opens his eyes in surprise. This is Lin. She asks Gray if she said his name. Casper looks at her in shock, and Lin looks only at Gray, asking if he is asking for a battle against everyone with full confidence in his abilities. Gray is surprised by this question and replies that of course. He punches himself in the chest and tells Lin that he will bring her victory, and Lin smiles and says it's good. She asks Gray to show his bravery to the Count. May the Holy Spirit come with him. Gray pushes off with his foot from the top of the gate. He thanks Lin for the kind words and jumps down. The sound of hoofbeats is heard. A man in the crowd attracts the attention of others, asking to look at the top, at the roof. Tenidas jumps from the roof in full gear. His cat holds the reins. People understand that it's a horse jumping off the roof. They cover their heads with their hands in shock. Gray lands on Tenedasu's back in flight, grabbing the reins. The cat happily raises its paws. Count Casper shouts to the servant, who is amazed by the sight, so that he does not hesitate and calls their knights. He shouts to all the knights to get ready for battle. Horses' hooves are pounding on the ground. Knights dressed in armor and with red cloaks ride in formation. Their commander shouts to follow him. It's about restoring reputation. They need to defeat this guy and end this farce. Gray is sitting astride Tenidas. Behind him are the gates of the Count's castle. The cat, seeing the approaching crowd of knights, asks to explain to him what is happening. Knights draw their weapons. Chapter 9. Count Casper's knights rush into battle with a shout. Dust rises behind them. One of the knights shouts that their opponent is only one. This is a great opportunity to gain momentum in one fell swoop. He calls the others to follow him. They are riding straight at Gray in a crowd. Dust is swirling behind them from the ground. Gray dodges the attack of the man who spoke. Tenidas stands on his hind hooves. Gray is watching his opponent with one eye closed. He draws his sword from its scabbard, and swiftly rushing past the enemy strikes him a crushing blow with a sword. The knight screams in pain, but then he stops and feels his chest. There is no damage on it, and the armor is intact. He's in shock. The cat shouts to Gray that he is doing. He does not know how to use a sword. He says he's sorry, he just wanted to try it. Gray says that Tenidas can easily take care of a rival's little pony with just one hoof. The knight clenches his teeth in anger. They shout at Gray how dare he tease him. He'll kill him. Gray is riding on Tenidas, while the cat shouts to him that now he has angered all the knights and what he will do now. Gray says that since the sword is not his assistant, then you need to use the old lick method. The cat asks him what the old lick method is. Gray puts his hands together, bringing his index fingers together. Magic begins to swirl around him. A magic circle with glowing symbols appears under Gray and Tenidas, and spells cover them with rings themselves. The cat is in shock. Gray uses the technique of fourfold gain, the technique of imposing fourfold protection, the technique of imposing fourfold speed. The knights see that Gray has stopped and decide that this is a great opportunity to strike. Gray turns to them smiling. Tenidas and the cat also smile. One of the knights gets hit in the face. Blood spurts out of him. The other also gets hit on the head and spits blood. One of the knights shouts to disperse, but it's too late. Gray quickly flies into the crowd, carrying them in different directions. Someone is shouting that he cannot be stopped. One of the knights asks his teammates not to panic, saying that Gray is just smart in managing a horse. He suggests just to fill up the horse scratch. Two knights rush into the attack, throwing spears at Tenidas, but the spear does not penetrate Gray's exposed defense. Tenidas counterattacks, striking the opponent in the face with his hooves. All the knights and their horses are lying on the ground in a pool of blood. They can't get up while Gray is riding past them. He shouts to the knights remaining on their feet to get out of the way, otherwise they will go flying. Tenidas is very excited about the battle. Gray notices this. One of the lying knights of Casper makes a cough. He says it's terrible. Gray is just a monster. Gray stands over the defeated opponents. Count Casper screams about how this is possible. Gray must have cheated somehow. Halls is amazed and happy, saying that Gray really did it. Gray is sitting astride a Tenidas in the arena when someone raises a sword behind him. Gray, hearing the sound, turns around. He is addressed as the Lord Knight and Lin, who holds a sword in her hands and says that this sword is Gray. He is very touched and thanks the lady. He says that in addition, he defeated 50 people in the tournament, as promised. Gray asks Lin if she can give him the title of knight, in response to which the girl smiles. She says that of course she will keep her promise and give Gray the title of knight. The crowd cheers and happily raises their fists. They run out into the arena to take a closer look at the winner and congratulate him. In the spring of 10,753, according to the Elven calendar, a great knight was born in the kingdom of Isaac in the south of the continent of Keltis, who will change the whole world in the future. Some people left in anger because of this. Count Caspar hurriedly, accompanied by a servant, leaves the venue of the tournament. Others wave their hands, wildly rejoicing. The crowd surrounds Gray, shouting with delight. They toss Gray in their arms. He is shocked by this reaction. He's thinking about that. Why are they abandoning him? Had he been discovered? When it happened, they won't break all his bones. Gray didn't understand anything at all. Chapter 10. The blonde man calls the other one to go with him to the castle tower faster. In response, the dark-haired man asks why they should go there. They answer him that there is gold there. The crowd rushes in a given direction. Near the castle tower, the knight who defeated 50 people yesterday throws gold and jewelry. Gold coins and precious stones are flying into the crowd. People cheerfully raise their hands, catching treasures. The cat, watching all this, asks Gray to explain to him what he is doing. Gray is standing at the top of the castle tower at this time, taking treasures out of a huge bag and throwing them into the crowd. He replies to the cat that he distributes the found treasures to the poor. It all started last night. And Lin stands with his sword raised in front of him. Gray stands in front of her, kneeling. And Lin says that the silver moon is a symbol of good luck. They met under the silver moon, so she assigns Gray the title of Knight of the Silver Moon. And Lin continues, asking Gray's forgiveness for such a modest oath ceremony. She hopes that in the future Gray will walk beside her, addressing him as a knight. Gray says he will fight for Yilin until he dies. There are lights in many windows in Count Caspar's castle. The maid opens the doors of one of the rooms in front of Gray, and says that this is the room that Miss Yilin has prepared for him. She addresses Gray as the Lord Knight of the Silver Moon, and offers to rest. He enters the room, the door is closed behind him. The cat goes to the bed and says that this world has gone crazy. The cat jumps right on the bed and ends his words by saying that the Lich has really become a knight. Gray laughs softly at first, and then so loudly that the cat gets scared. Gray shouts that he has really become a knight and raises his hands in joy. The cat is amazed and says that this is how the Liches laugh. Gray is dancing with delight at this time. Gray takes his book about knights and says he can't get enough of it. He still doesn't know much as a knight, and he needs to catch up on his studies. The cat curls up on the bed and tells Gray to study, but not to make noise, because he will sleep. Gray takes the cat by the scruff of the neck, lifts him up and asks him not to sleep, as he needs advice. Gray, reading the book, tells the cat that in it the knight gives all the treasures found to the poor. Gray asks the cat where he can find treasures and who is poor. The cat is angry. He replies that the term poor is a broad concept that does not apply to any one person. Compared to Count Caspar, everyone in Xianyou Port is poor. Speaking of treasures, this castle is full of them, so Gray can search. The cat uploads his speech with the question that now he can sleep. Then, he yawns. The action returns to the day when Gray throws treasures to the crowd. The cat asks Gray if he robbed Caspar's treasury, to which Gray says that he did so. The cat yells at him that he's a crazy moron. On the other side of the castle, temporary cabinet and Lin. The entrance to it is guarded by 2 guards, and Lin is sitting at his desk, signing some papers, when Halls enters the office, accompanied by another soldier. And Lin asks what they need so early in the morning. Abby Robbs and Halls came to her. They are confused. Then Abby Robbs asks Lin that with all due respect, but she's really going to take this Gray. And Lin replies that they should have seen his bravery, and she needs his strength. Abby Robbs shouts back that they don't know who he really is and who he used to be. Gray didn't even take off his helmet at the oath ceremony. Suddenly he was sent by the king, and Lin signs the document and says that if Gray was sent by the king, then she wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to them anymore. Abby Robbs doesn't know what to say to that, and Lin continues, saying that having picked up people, you should trust them. Abby Robbs is her most trusted person, and she hopes that they will not talk about this topic anymore. Here he tells his mistress that there will be no more such conversations. Then another soldier bursts in, slamming the door without knocking and shouting that he has bad news from Miss Yilin. He repeats the Knight of the Silver Moon several times, and after catching his breath, he finishes the news, saying that the Knight of the Silver Moon has robbed Caspar's treasury and is distributing everything on the castle tower. Halls and Abby Robbs open their mouths in horror, and Lin freezes. She slams her fist down on the table. All the soldiers pay attention to her, and Lin silently puts his head on his clasped hands. Her soldiers are asking her if she's okay, and Lin replies that everything is fine. Gray is still at the castle tower, and she will go to meet him. One of the soldiers shouts at her to calm down and put away the sword. Chapter 11. And Lin never considered herself worthy of a lord. A white bird flies to the city on a clear sunny day. Swords are crossed in a blow. A little girl learns to fight a man who tells her to hit from above. He praises her movements, but asks her to watch the defense. Then a cry of caution is heard and the girl almost misses the blow. The blade of the sword stops near her face. She opens her eyes in surprise. The man makes a gesture with his hand up. The girl falls on her back, dropping the sword. The coach is interested in what is wrong, because Lin also fell from a small push. She wouldn't become the Grand Duke of the Bihel family that way. And Lin is still sitting on the ground, trying to catch his breath. Lin had a quality that even she didn't notice. And Lin thinks about what else a man could expect from a little girl. But she says out loud with determination in her voice that she is ready to try again. She addresses the man as her father, and Lin was very good at pretending. An adult and Lin, accompanied by Halls and Abby Robs, walks along the corridor of the castle. And Lin thinks about what the hell this knight is doing. Is he trying to stop her somehow? Casper, the old fox, lost the duel, but continues to evade signing the oath. And Lin imagines Casper lying unconscious and how she holds Gray's scarf with one hand and clutches a sword with the other. She thinks about how she wants to beat them both up. Halls and Abby Robs understand what Lin is thinking. Gray is standing in front of the entrance to the castle grounds. The cat is sitting next to him on the ground. Opposite them, accompanied by 2 guards, is Count Casper. He tells Gray that the knight is a thief and let him see what he has done. Gray clutches a bag of treasures in his hands and says with incomprehension in his voice that he was just distributing treasures to the poor as a knight should do. Casper clenches his fists in anger and shouts to Gray that these are not found treasures, but his. He points at the knight with his finger and shouts that he is just a nasty thief. Gray looks at the bag in his hands and asks about the fact that these treasures had an owner. Gray gets angry and tells Casper that how could he know that the treasure is his. Casper had to write his name on them. Casper shouts to him that in his opinion, he is also to blame. Their altercation is heard by Lin, Halls and Abby Robs coming towards them, who says it's noisy there. He continues, addressing Elin, that they had better stop Gray before it becomes something more. Of course, in addition to the ability to pretend, Lin also has another trait that is necessary in order to be a lord. She thinks Gray and Casper are together. This is a great opportunity. The trait that is necessary to be a lord is perspicacity. Casper shouts that he's had enough. He does not want to talk to Gray anymore and demands that he call his master. And Lin appears behind Casper's back and shocking him, says that it's so unexpected. Uncle Casper requests an audience with her, and Lin smiles and continues, saying that she thought Casper didn't want to fulfill his oath since he was avoiding her. Casper sweats and turns to Elin. He tries to find an excuse for avoiding her, when Gray interrupts him and shouts that Lin is greeted by Knight Gray, and Lin greets him and waves to him. Casper, in anger, thinks that Gray is an ill-mannered wild knight, and Lin says that in any case, Uncle Casper should know that if he refuses to fulfill his oath, then she has the right to deprive him of his title. He's in shock. Then he glances at Gray and understands everything. Casper says that Lin also sent Gray to rob his treasury. She replies that she herself has just found out about it. Her knight is not very knowledgeable, and she compensates for the damage caused. After all, unlike some people, she is a man of her word. Casper is angry at these words. He throws and Lin the contract and leaving says that let her not hope that she will be able to resist the king, only having received some troops from him. And Lin replies that Casper doesn't need to worry about it. Gray asks if he did something wrong, and Lin says he did everything right. That old fox had forgotten that she couldn't strip someone of their title until she became a Grand Duke. It's all thanks to Gray, and Lin tells Gray that he did a good job this time. But stealing someone else's property is not good, and this time she will make amends. But if this happens again, Gray will pay everything out of her salary. Gray guiltily lowers his head and agrees, and Lin tells him that now that the contract has been received, there is no need for them to stay in Xianyu port. She tells Gray to get ready. Tomorrow he returns to Beicheng with her, and Lin leaves, and Gray looks after her. Then, he leans over to the cat and asks what the salary is. The cat thinks that he did not notice this before, however, and Lin does not deserve trust, since she accepted such a narrow-minded knight. The future is not encouraging. Chapter 12. And Lin is sitting on horseback surrounded by his soldiers and knights, next to Gray riding a Tenedas. Gray looks around and notices that there really are so many of them. But why didn't he see them in the tournament? The cat says that these are ordinary soldiers, and only knights were allowed to participate in the tournament. The cat looks at another part of the troops and thinks that Casper's soldiers are also here. Something bad is going to happen. The army is moving out. By nightfall, the army sets up camp. Someone is calling Gray Knight of the Silver Moon. Gray asks the soldier why he was looking for him. The soldier replies that he doesn't know exactly what's going on. Mr. Halls gave the order for Gray to come to Miss Yilin's tent. Halls stands with his arms crossed over his chest. He tells Yilin that he can't accept it after all. She tells him that Casper's oath is an opportunity for them to use it to get more lords to join her. To do this, it needs reliable messengers to spread information. And there is no more reliable choice than Halls himself knows who. Which of these he cannot accept. Halls shouts that she is going to send him an Abby Robs, and Gray will stay with her in general, in case he has bad intentions. And Lin says that if Gray has evil thoughts towards her, then does Halls have the strength to stop him? He's in shock, and Lin says no. So, even if they stay, there is no point in protecting them. They should become messengers to expand her camp. Gray looks into the tent, asking if he was called. Everyone present looks at him in silence, and Gray does not understand what he did wrong. Hall slaps Gray on the shoulder and says that the safety of Miss and Lin is in his hands. With that, Halls and Abby Robs left the camp. Gray doesn't understand why Halls called him and what security is. He has grown into the tent like a tree and does not understand what to do. Gray thinks to ask his questions and Lin or not. Gray thinks about why the cat is sleeping right now. And Lin, seeing Gray's condition, asks if he is nervous. He replies that he doesn't, because he doesn't know what to do. And Lin says that he just needs to guard this place and knock down anyone who tries to attack her. Gray understands his mission. And Lin considers Gray an oddball, since he does not want to take off his helmet, does not know about the Knight's Oath. She believes that he is not from this country or is not a person at all. It's so suspicious that even she wouldn't accept such a suspicious knight if it was a normal situation. Gray replies that he is ordinary. But Lin also sees that his eyes were running. She asks him not to be nervous. She says that no matter who Gray is and what he did before, from the moment he swore allegiance to her, he became her knight. She will pay for his status and vouch for his protection. At this time, the awakened cat notices someone flying in the sky. Gray is very touched by Yilin's words, and says she is the best lord. He will always be devoted to her. And Lin says stop talking. It's been a while since Halls left. She tells Gray to get ready, soon they will be welcoming guests. Then someone cuts through the tent with a sword from above. The masked man says he has found a white-haired, blue-eyed woman. The target is confirmed. The liquidation begins.